Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Oh, wow. Hi, everybody. This is your friend Owen. Just wanted to say hi and how much I love podcasting. It's wild. I tell you, there's not much time in the day. And when I'm listening to a podcast, I choose the Living Artist Podcast. I think you should too. Wow. Well, make sure you enjoy this podcast. You're going to love it. Okay, bye now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, come on, it was nothing. It was really nothing. It's the least I could do. The least I could do? What the hell does that mean? No, I'm trying out a new impression. If you couldn't tell who that was, that's Owen Wilson, our buddy from film and television, I guess. Owen Wilson. And yeah, I thought it would be fun to just put something out there. I always like to just go out, and I really worked on that like for a minute before I started this. I haven't even really worked on it, but I thought it was fun. And it's kind of fun to hear the process a little bit sometimes. It's kind of fun to hear the process. It's kind of fun to hear the process of working out an impression and just putting it out there. Because if you don't put it out there, sometimes you won't. And you know what? That coincides with the theme of this podcast episode. And I think I'm calling it Free Your Mind. Free Your Mind. Shout out to the 90s there and In Vogue. You might remember In Vogue. And why are we calling it Free Your Mind? Because I wanted to talk to you today about kind of our own mental blocks and maybe even emotional blocks and psychological blocks even that get in the way. I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. I think a lot of times we're talking about like, oh, it's so hard, the gatekeepers and getting into a gallery and growing your social media presence and all that. But you know what? If you don't have a strong mind game, then you aren't going to be able to do much. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And we're going to delve into exposing your own blocks. What are some of these blocks that could be holding you back that you can work on? And just once you free those up and free your mind, then maybe you can accomplish everything that you're setting out to accomplish. And, that's why I just decided to do the impression at the beginning, because it's like, you know what? You can either block yourself by letting the internal critic kind of say, no, this isn't ready yet. You got to polish this up and wait to get this out there. Or you could just go all out, not overthink it, and just put it out there. And that's what I did. It's wild. Yeah. So I just put it out there. Hope you liked it. And let's get into the episode. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about mental blocks and things that can kind of get in the way of your career and just advancing in everything that you want to do in life and in your art? I'm talking about little things and big things. It can be as big as trauma, or it can be as small as procrastination. I'll give you one for me that's a little bit more complex because, I'm pretty good at like putting my work out there. I'm pretty good at, just being kind of a machine and cranking out the work and getting it out there and doing some things. But I've noticed something about me, and it probably comes from childhood, probably comes from some stuff that I, never really worked out 100%. But, having the awareness of it, as we're talking about in this podcast, is kind of half the battle. Once you're aware of it, you can kind of, see these things as they're happening and then take steps to change them in the process. So one for me is this kind of like, I don't know, I'll start doing something and I'll feel confident in it. Or I'll think like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm going to do something in this gallery. I'm going to, put more work in the show. And then if I get some sort of any like bad energy or a feeling from somebody that they're not really, vibing with what I'm doing, or they're not really kind of like on board. And this could be something that I'm completely making up. It's not even something that somebody said to me, but if I get the vibe that somebody is not into it, I will immediately pull back and kind of play that like, I'm not going to force this if you're not into it. It's like if you're going to, get into a relationship with somebody and you're putting yourself out there and you're trying to make a good impression. And let's say, the person's playing hard to get. I will immediately take that as they're not interested. I'm going to pull back and I'm not going to put any more effort into this. And many times the other person could be like into it and be like, oh no, I just, I want him to put in a little bit more effort. And then, I will open up to it. But for me, I just take that as, oh, okay, well, you know what? Fine. Screw it. You're not into me. I'm going to just focus elsewhere. I'm going to, retreat into myself. I do that same negative pattern in my art and my career. And that's something, it's kind of vulnerable for me to say, but like when I could have just maybe pushed through many different circumstances, I'll go, oh, no, they're not into it. Oh, they're not into me. They're not into my art. I didn't like the feeling that they gave me. I didn't like the look they gave me. When many times people just can be a little socially awkward or something. It's not even like they're doing something to you, but I will read into it and I will overanalyze it and I will immediately pull back. And I think that's kept me from advancing a lot in certain ways, or getting into certain shows, or doing better with certain galleries, or, whatever relationships in life within art or with, outside of art. That can be something, very blocking in life and for your own growth. So that's one of mine. I will go through a couple other examples just so you know what I'm talking about in general, not necessarily with me. Well, okay, let's stay in the same vein and let's kind of take the opposite approach to that, because there can be extremes at each end of the spectrum, right? You could be one of those people who just has zero filter and cannot read social cues at all. And then you push, or you can be overbearing, or you can be like, oh, this person is just needy, or they're showing up too much, or they're too, they're pushing their work too much, or they don't have any idea or concept of my own time and, the things that I've got going in my life. And I don't have the time to just devote so much effort to this one person. That's the opposite end of that. And I think that's probably what drives my fear and why I would pull back, is like, I don't want to be that person who's overbearing and annoying. So I'll just be like, it's okay. I can find a different avenue, or I can just, approach this in a different way or from a different angle. And I think both of those can be detrimental, like that over pushing, kind of like not being able to see social cues and not being able to pull yourself back. Sometimes that can work to your advantage because, you're just pushing your work out there. And sometimes because of that efforting and because it's like a numbers game, you're like, well, I'm just pushing. I'm getting it out there. Now, I think you can do it too much where maybe you don't develop the best kind of relationships, because you might get your work and do a lot of shows. You might, get out there and get the numbers game going, but are you really developing like a solid emotional relationship with people, something that can grow and flourish, and something that's not just going to be like, all right, we'll just put you in the show, just shut up. You know what I mean? So that can be the other end of that. Now, obviously you want to be somewhere in the middle probably, but those are just two examples of, your own type of blocks that you can have, emotional or social. Now you can have ones that are more internal that a lot of people don't see. You can be procrastination. It could be ADHD. It could be an emotional trauma that you have that completely blocks you from being able to believe in yourself to get out there. Now, some of these you can do by working with a therapist, right? If you are that extreme and it's completely debilitating to every aspect of your life, you probably should be working with a therapist. Maybe you should even be medicated, or maybe it could be a nutritional thing or some lifestyle changes. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, but I would recommend obviously working with one if that's something that's bothering you. But a lot of these blocks can be even, just smaller than that. It can be social dynamics within your family, like you're the youngest child, or you're the oldest child. Therefore, you developed these traits, and then these traits can be kind of detrimental to your development as a kid, but also in your art career moving forward. And I just bring those up for you to be aware and maybe to reflect on it in your own life and go, what am I doing in my life? What have I developed? What kind of traits, what kind of habits, what kind of approaches have I developed because of maybe social dynamics or family dynamics? And that can push you in the right direction to kind of expose some of these blocks. Okay, we've talked about this one before. Maybe you have imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is something that affects a lot of people nowadays. And I think it's kind of been put on steroids with the social media phenomenon, because everybody's seeing everything that everybody else is doing. And so they're so like, oh, this person's so much more capable than I am. A lot of times they're just putting on, their best face. Maybe they're just acting it out, or maybe, they're just showing their highlight reel. Now there's some people who are just starting out and have imposter syndrome. And maybe that just means you got to slow down and do the work, get a body of work, amass a body of work, and then start putting it out there, chip away little by little. But you don't necessarily have to have imposter syndrome. Everybody has to start out somewhere. And there's people who've been doing this for 20, 30 years who still have imposter syndrome, who still don't believe that their work is good enough or it doesn't hold up against somebody else's work. And, that's just an irrational fear. It's the inner critic taking over. And that can be a major block in your artistic career and just in life in general. I've encountered people throughout my career who have sometimes, they reach out a lot to, get you to do something for them, whether that is, I've got a show up at my show, or I've got a birthday, or, I'd love a blurb here or something like that. And, that can be a block. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to people and making connections that way. But if you become that person who is only reaching out when you need something, that can really ruin a lot of relationships, and that can cause other blocks in your career. So be mindful of something like that. What's another one? Maybe your mental block is that you've been conditioned, rightfully or wrongfully so, to believe that, the galleries are like, they don't want you in there. Like the gatekeepers are trying to keep you out. Like, they don't want your work in there. Therefore, maybe I don't need to try as hard. Or maybe you just, add some undue stress and anxiety to when you're approaching a gallery, and it doesn't need to be there. Maybe you need to just shift that mindset and that perspective into thinking, you know what? These people are looking for work. They want me to fulfill this position. It actually frees them up. They're looking for art. They need art to sell. They want good art, and I can provide that for them. They don't want me out. They just want the right person in. And if that isn't you, that doesn't mean that the gallery or the whole art world doesn't like you. It just means you might not have been a good fit. So making that little shift can be a really good way of unblocking that type of negative thought process. All right, let's just do one more. Well, I'll go with another old, tried and true block from my past that I'm sure some people out there are still struggling with. And if it isn't affecting you exactly this way, you can kind of replace it with something else, because there's a lot of other things that can do this to you. I used to have this whole idea and fascination with artists who were tortured and starving and, had a problem with substances or alcohol or something like that. And I found it to be this tragic kind of like beautiful scenario. And, we do that in society. We make it look like that is something that is to be admired, almost like, live fast, die young, or like, you got to have all these horrible, tortured issues to be this dark artist, to be able to dig deep and grab onto these ideas and to put them out there into the world. Look, I don't think it's absolutely wrong to think that we need to struggle to have ideas and to put ideas out there that are of worth and value. But I think we all struggle. I think some people struggle more than others, but it's all relative. You can't really measure these things. You didn't struggle as much as I did, or you didn't suffer as much as I did. Like, I'm suffering a lot right now. I would never want anybody to suffer as much as I am. But that doesn't mean you need to suffer that much to create great work. So scrubbing that out of your mind can also free some blocks, because it can kind of stop you from going down that path of having bad behavior or, like I did, I used to just struggle so much with, feeling hungover or feeling really bad and depressed because I was trying to live that lifestyle. And also there's the covering up and the trying to work through and process trauma. Of course, that's in there too. But it is also just this societal stigma we have about artists and how they need to be tortured. And that is something that we could definitely free ourselves from to not only live a better and more productive life, but a healthier life. And that's what we're trying to do here. So these have just been some examples of blocks in your own life. I'm sure you can come up with hundreds more, and I'm sure it's individualized for everybody out there, but you get the idea. And sometimes it's just freeing some of these patterns that we have, these negative patterns, thought patterns, or physical patterns that we have in our own lives that can open up a new door for us, or can just take away this big obstacle or this small obstacle that's sitting in our way of success and fulfillment as artists. Hope you liked this episode. If you did, feel free to leave a comment on social media or on this podcast as well. Looking forward to bringing you some more episodes. Take care of yourselves. Take care of everybody else out there, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize I had to do the intro and outro. Gosh, okay. Let me give it a try.
You know what? I'm going to stop you right there, Owen. I think we've heard enough. You've done your part. Besides, I haven't said anything in a long time. Let me take a crack at it.
Oh, gosh, sure.
Okay. Thanks. Well, you know what? I don't have anything to say. Just roll the fucking credits.
This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.